Hello everybody, what is up? Cobra here. So as you can see, it is the end of 1917 and me and my group have decided to call it for my Great War 1917 game. And not too much has happened in the past two turns since I've talked with you guys, but we'll just kind of show you around. So the game did end in a Allied victory, just barely from what we were seeing based on the victory conditions that we were playing with from the beginning. So not much changed over here in South America. You can see Germany still has a pretty decent grasp on Chile, with America not really having too many forces to come down and recapture it. Plus, Germany has also the ability to probably maybe launch some kind of invasion into Argentina. So, with support from their fleet over here and the Chilean Navy. You can see the Germans did take Panama, and they have it with sufficient forces, and naval support, so that is definitely being held decently. Now, the biggest downfall with Germany and its Mexican allies is that had this game gone on one more turn, you can see that huge amounts of American forces were bearing down on Mexico City, so I can probably think that next turn Mexico City would have fallen, and because Mexico is its own power, they probably wouldn't have been able to retake it, which means that Mexico would have surrendered, meaning that places like Veracruz and Cuba would have fallen to the Americans pretty easily. And without that big land power, Germany and its fleet would probably have to hold out down here where not much victory conditions had taken place. So with America, you can see their final purchase consisted of a ton of super heavy tanks, as everyone wanted to build some cool stuff from this turn. The American fleet amassed and blew up some of the German convoy raiders that were off the coast of Florida. Spain probably had the weakest game. They were only in it for 2 turns, and you can see they kept their navy relegated to their home waters, too afraid to launch any sort of invasion over here. And they didn't even launch an attack into Spain or France, just because they were trying to amass some forces. And this is a German Zeppelin here that flew up from Africa. You can see that France was on the brink of collapse, with Paris being heavily contested here with the German army. And you can see Burgundy also had a huge battle going on over here in the Western Front. But what we mainly convened was that now in the main game, like, this game isn't finished by all means, so in the main version of this I want to have a nice list of victory conditions so that it's kind of similar to Global War or Global 40, where stuff like, you would imagine that, say Germany had somehow taken all of China, you would think that that would give them some, or all of Africa, that would give them some kind of sway on the diplomatic board if they hadn't taken Paris. But just because we didn't have anything, we just decided to play with, they need to capture Paris and one other allied city, which we thought that even if Paris had fallen completely, there really wasn't much of a chance of another city falling. Now, the Russian Revolution could have started, which would have put Petrograd in Bolshevik hands, but Britain deployed a ton of forces to Russia last turn to safeguard the Russian government, which ended up not even falling anyways. Which also brings me to the second point, where we've got this huge Russian army here, and they could have easily just wiped out the Germans there in Poland. And also, this Austro-Hungarian army, while it could have probably taken this zone even if these reinforcements had come into it, they wouldn't have been able to contest these guys here long enough for the Germans to make an escape or reinforce. So, kind of inconclusive up here in the Western Front. One other thing was that the British did come over here and launch a big counterattack into the German invasion of Finland. And you can see the huge amounts of British transports there, these big stacks that came up here. Britain still stands strong, no threat of invasion after the German high seas fleet pretty much suicided into the British Navy. So keeping with Europe, as we go over here for a better angle, you can see that Spain, or France, ended up getting some reinforcements in the form of this big heavy bomber here. America did drop off some forces to help out with Paris. Another big thing that happened last turn was that a lot of random events were pulled, which really made the Central Powers in a difficult situation had this game continued, where you can see that, as you know from last video, Austria-Hungary spent a ton of time trying to suppress Serbia and push into Macedonia. But the problem with last turn was that some random events were pulled and a Serbian revolt happened. That's why we have a German or Russian infantry contesting this army here. Plus, I think the biggest thing happened the biggest event of this game that would have swung this game was that Greece, which this huge mass here, pretty much as strong as Austria-Hungary in the Balkan, probably, yeah, the strongest army in the Balkan region, plus their navy down here aligned to the French. So that was pretty big, and you can see right on the border here the amount of Greek forces that are ready to hit the Austrian main Balkan front would have been devastating. So that was a pretty big factor. Plus, I think the only real hope that the Central Powers had over here was the Austro-Hungarian Navy, which I still think could have gone up against this navy here. You can see that it was a pretty large navy, lots of capital ships, but the major issue was that you had, at the time there was a British Navy here, but you still got the French, two French minor navies sitting around, and the British Navy could have come down and wiped them out too. One little mini success was that the Ottomans had come down from blockading the Russians and actually sank a larger British force. They didn't get the transports, but it was a pretty good battle to end the Ottoman Navy. The Ottoman Air Force also is pretty big. They do have some stormtroopers too. Just little things that were built last turn. They did decide to contest the Sinai just because, just to stick it to the British. The Ottoman revolt in Cyrenaica was finally thwarted as they had almost captured it by the end of the game. The British finally took all of German southern Africa, minus Omega Base here, which, funny enough, they could have taken this, but they actually decided not to because everyone agreed that it was a cool name, and they let Germany keep that territory. The last German stronghold was up here in Cameroon, where the British kind of had some bad luck down here, and the Germans, with that Zeppelin that I mentioned in Spain, were able to deploy an artillery to help these guys out. But you can see that the British were definitely on the warpath of taking back all of West Africa. So over here, the Ottoman Empire really did not have a good game. They were struggling the entire time. They got bogged down in Romania. Pretty much the funny thing is that they were completely... Nobody had captured, like the British didn't take anything over here. The British didn't even push up here. For pretty much the whole game, the only thing the Ottomans had to deal with was a Russian invasion of Armenia, which they still couldn't even handle. So they definitely got diced pretty bad, the Austrian and Ottoman player that I had on my team. So over here into the Pacific, this was a pretty fun war. I like how balanced it is. I increased basically from real life the amount of forces that Germany had in the area. Like, I gave them like an almost 1-to-1 ship basis, and the German Pacific and Indian Ocean Navy is massed over there in South America. But it makes for a pretty fun and balanced game where the Australians and Japanese are definitely way overwhelming German forces, but it is a fun little chess game, basically, where, you know, the Australians are making little assaults and the Germans are trying to defend their ports with stuff like auxiliary cruisers and building more infantry. But given time, these territories all would have fallen pretty soon. You can see that the French colonies in Indochina were under heavy attack by these are Ottoman forces. They represent tribes rising up, and there is still a German, or basically Southeast Asia is under a lot of revolts right now, with the Ottomans or Muslim forces taking up arms, plus this German representing Indian army taking up arms against the British. Plus, in the last turn, we had this little Ottoman incursion of Western India through a random event, and this big prison break over here, almost taking Turkmenistan. The Japanese are also really strong, and given some time, you can see with all these Marines and their huge navy, they probably would have hit the Ottomans pretty hard next turn. Overall, that's just about it. German Tsingtao actually still holds, and Tianjin was didn't actually have any combat, but the Austrians did run amok a little bit. You can see they captured Japanese and French Tianjin. But that pretty much concludes the game itself. Now, I did make I started a list of things that I want to change, and there's little things like painting some more units, adding some units, changing some of the alignment rules. The biggest thing that you're going to see in my next iteration of the map, which, I don't have any dates for, but will basically be to change up the actual sizing of a lot of the stuff. So Africa is probably going to get pretty squished. Now you can see that basically I probably want it to be around here, the actual North African coastline, which means Europe and the Mediterranean is going to come down. And with this way too big Atlantic Ocean, what's going to happen is Great Britain is going to be placed somewhere up there, and Europe, you can kind of follow my finger here, will come here, and then we'll have France go down, Spain around here, and then it'll come back up. So Europe will be like pretty much taking up the area of my hand here. So there'll be no more need for those blow-up boxes, and Europe will be just a massive continent here, and leaving a little more room in the Mediterranean, because other than coastline territories, these huge sea zones don't need to exist, and up there, we don't need a huge sea zone. The Baltic, while it was fun having some more sea zones, they're not needed that much due to the Russian Navy being such a big pushover. So Scandinavia will also kind of squish up into the corner there. Another thing is with America, you can see all that space up there that's not needed. So to compensate for sizing, with the UK being somewhere around here, Canada will be pushed up to that line, the Canadian-American border. With America being really big, they had a lot of size, but why not just give them a little bit more, especially if you want to play with the Confederacy expansion that I have for this game. Mexico will also get a little bit bigger, and especially Central America. I want to get all the Central American nations added to the game, so that'll be something to look forward to. And another thing is with the territories, is I want to make this game have it's going to have a lot more territories in general. That's mainly because I want to do away with the whole 1914 entrenched mechanic. I think it's been a little too difficult to play with. It can get a little complex. Territories have to be huge because you have to deal with these big battles. Stuff is complex when it deals with like money. You forget if you've added, like a territory is contested, you take off the money from the person it's contested from, and then you forget about it, so that when the territory is captured, you take off more money. And so I think it's a little bit easier for you to just, walk in, battle it out, boom, you have the territory. The only problem is I want it to be like World War I, where it is this grinding combat. So what I've decided to add, and I've done little mock-ups for the Balkans region and such, where there's just going to be more territories now to capture. So there'll still be that push and pull, because there's just going to be more stuff for you to, you know, the Austrians may push in like that, but they'll still have a ton more territories to take in the Balkan region. Same with the Western Front. There's just going to be more territory diversity, more room for maneuvers, but also more room to get bogged down in. The random event cards I really liked. I hope to make a video soon on these, maybe in the coming week, make them available on makeplayingcards.com. They were really fun to play with. They were decently balanced, and yeah, I liked playing with those. So yeah, that is the rundown of my Great War 1914 game. I hope you enjoyed these 2 little short looks into playing, and yeah, I hope to see you guys again soon. Cobra, out.